Probably holding a small copper coin right now that looks completely ordinary, and that's exactly why people keep losing thousands of dollars without even realizing it. Today on CoinNova, we're exposing 4 ultra-rare wheat pennies hiding in plain sight that collectors are quietly fighting over behind closed auction rooms. Some of these coins look dirty, worn out, even damaged, but that ugly surface could actually be hidden wealth. And the scariest part? Most people spend these coins every single day like pocket change. So before you dump your pennies into a jar, check your pocket now, because one tiny detail could reveal a silent fortune. These are real auction shocks. These coins change everything, and every coin we reveal gets rarer, more valuable, and more dangerous to ignore. And trust me, the final coin in this video is the kind of discovery collectors dream about for years. The 1927 wheat penny with no mint mark is one of those coins that people ignore in seconds and later regret for the rest of their lives. At first glance, it doesn't scream wealth. It doesn't look flashy. In fact, most examples look tired, dark, dirty, and forgotten. But that's exactly what makes this coin terrifying to overlook. A red-toned 1927 wheat penny with strange grey-black spotting across both sides, especially in almost fine condition with untouched surfaces, can trigger absolute obsession among serious Lincoln cent collectors. And when one of these original survivors appears in the auction world, the room changes immediately. Quiet bidders suddenly become aggressive. Collectors stop blinking. Prices climb fast. Because they know something most people don't. This is not just an old penny. This is hidden treasure disguised as spare change. Now here's where the story gets even crazier. The year 1927 mattered more than most people realize. America was living through the roaring 20s, but underneath all the excitement, economic pressure was building silently. Manufacturing was exploding. Industry was moving fast. The US Mint was pushing enormous coin production to keep up with commerce flowing across the country. Pennies moved through banks, factories, train stations, diners, and small-town shops at unbelievable speed. These coins weren't protected. They were handled hard every single day. Tossed into drawers, dropped onto concrete, stuffed into pockets beside keys and pocket knives. That brutal circulation destroyed countless examples forever. Which means finding a surviving 1927 wheat penny today with original color, natural wear, and untouched surfaces is becoming incredibly difficult. And this is where collectors become emotional about this specific coin. The 1927 issue without a mint mark was struck in Philadelphia, meaning no tiny letter appears beneath the date. That missing mint mark creates a strange psychological effect in the collecting world. Some people ignore Philadelphia coins because they seem common. Serious collectors do the opposite. They hunt for the best survivors because they know the majority were heavily abused during circulation. They know original examples are disappearing every year. And they know once these coins enter strong collections, they rarely come back out again. Look closely at the obverse side of this penny, and you'll immediately understand why condition changes everything. Abraham Lincoln's portrait carries that unmistakable vintage appearance that modern coins simply cannot recreate. On higher-end survivors, even in almost fine condition, you can still see portions of Lincoln's coat lines, the shape of the jaw, and traces of detail around the hair above the ear. But what really captures collector attention is that strange red appearance mixed with grey-black spotting across the surface. Most people think discoloration automatically means damage. Sometimes it does. But on older copper coins, Natural oxidation and decades of untouched toning can create a surface collectors absolutely love. It gives the coin character, age, authenticity, a haunted, antique appearance that modern cleaned coins can never imitate. And this is critical. Never clean this coin. Ever. One careless cleaning can permanently erase thousands of dollars in value overnight. Collectors can spot cleaned copper instantly. The unnatural shine, the hairline scratches, the stripped surfaces. Once original toning disappears, the emotional connection disappears too. And when emotion leaves the auction room, the money follows right behind it. That's why professional grading is absolutely critical for a coin like this. Authentication protects the coin, confirms originality, and can completely transform how the market values it. Flip the coin over, and the reverse design tells an even deeper story. The famous wheat ears stretching along both sides create one of the most recognizable designs in American coin history. Across the top, 1 cent stands proudly in the center with United States of America beneath it, while E pluribus unum arches above. But on a 1927 survivor, collectors become obsessed with tiny details most people never notice. They study the wheat grain lines, the sharpness of lettering, the exact color transitions across the copper. Even the darkness near the rim matters. This detail changes everything. A naturally aged reverse with deep antique contrast can feel almost impossible to replicate artificially, which is why original examples attract such fierce competition. And physically, this coin carries the exact dimensions that defined an era of American currency. The 1927 wheat penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams and contains 95% copper, with the remaining balance made of tin and zinc. Its diameter measures 19.05 millimeters with a thickness around 1.55 millimeters. The edge is smooth, but after nearly a century of circulation, many surviving examples developed soft rim wear and surface texture from decades of handling. When you hold one in your hand, it doesn't just feel like a penny. It feels like something rescued from another America entirely. What makes survival so rare is how few people protected these coins back then. During the late 1920s and the difficult years that followed, pennies were not collectibles to ordinary Americans. They were necessities. A single cent still mattered. Families spent them immediately. Children carried them loose in pockets. Workers exchanged them daily for food, newspapers, or transit. Nobody imagined that decades later, collectors would pay staggering money for the right example. That lack of preservation is exactly why original survivors are becoming more valuable every year. And now the market behavior surrounding this coin has become intense. Serious collectors are no longer casually buying key wheat pennies. They're holding them tightly. Some refuse to sell at all because supply keeps shrinking while demand keeps rising. Every major auction creates more fear among buyers who missed the previous sale. That emotional pressure pushes prices even higher. And when a naturally toned 1927 mint mark wheat penny with strong originality surfaces, bidders start thinking irrationally. Not because they're careless, because they know another opportunity may not appear for years. Today, examples matching this rare profile have reached shocking auction numbers approaching $321,500 under the right circumstances. Think about that for a second. A tiny 1-cent coin, smaller than a bottle cap, capable of carrying life-changing money. This is silent fortune, hiding inside old jars, dresser drawers, inherited collections, and forgotten boxes sitting in garages across America right now. This is not fiction. But here's the dangerous part: most people never hear. Many valuable wheat pennies are accidentally destroyed before collectors ever see them. Some get polished until the surfaces are ruined forever. Others are cleaned with baking soda, chemicals, or cloths that scratch away originality permanently. Even worse, people spend them without checking dates carefully. That's why patience creates wealth in this hobby. Smart collectors slow down. They inspect every detail. They protect original surfaces. And they understand that ugly-looking coins sometimes hide the biggest surprises. So if you find a 1927 wheat penny without a mint mark, especially one showing original red color mixed with dark gray-black spotting, stop immediately. Do not spend this coin. Do not clean it. Check the surfaces carefully under light. Study the lettering. Look for natural aging. And if the coin appears authentic, professional grading could completely change your understanding of what you're holding. And honestly, what comes next is even bigger. Because the next wheat penny on this list doesn't just attract collectors, it creates outright panic when one appears at auction. The story behind that coin is darker, rarer, and far more valuable than almost anyone realizes. Most people would throw this penny away in seconds. Seriously, if you found a 1937 wheat penny covered with green spots, dark dirt trapped deep inside the surface, and strange pores eating through the copper, you would probably assume it was damaged beyond saving. And that mistake is exactly why hidden fortunes keep disappearing every day in America. Because the truth about the 1937 mint mark wheat penny is something most people never hear until it's too late. Collectors are quietly chasing these untouched survivors with a level of obsession that shocks new buyers entering the market. Especially when the coin still carries that eerie red-brown color buried underneath decades of aging. What looks ugly to ordinary people can look priceless to the right collector. And this coin proves it. The story behind the 1937 wheat penny begins during one of the most emotionally difficult periods in American history. The United States was still struggling through the effects of the Great Depression. Families protected every cent they had. Factories pushed production hard. Money moved constantly through hands, stores, banks, train stations, gas pumps, and corner shops. Pennies from this era lived rough lives. They were not saved carefully inside holders or albums. They were spent hard, dropped into mud, scraped across counters, and forgotten in damp drawers for decades. That brutal circulation created something strange in today's market. Truly original survivors are becoming terrifyingly scarce. And this is where the 1937 Philadelphia issue becomes fascinating. Because there's no mint mark beneath the date, millions of casual collectors ignore it instantly. But experienced buyers know better. They understand that surviving examples with original surfaces, natural corrosion patterns, untouched dirt, and authentic environmental aging tell a story modern cleaned coins can never copy. That's why this detail changes everything. A naturally aged coin feels alive. It carries history physically on the surface. Now look carefully at the obverse sign. Abraham Lincoln's portrait on a 1937 wheat penny has a completely different emotional impact when the surfaces remain raw and untouched. On this particular type of survivor, collectors focus intensely on the strange red-brown appearance hiding beneath green oxidation and dark debris trapped inside the pores of the metal. Most people panic when they see green spots. Collectors don't always react that way. In some cases, those spots are evidence of long-term natural aging that confirms originality. And originality is everything in the wheat penny market right now. But listen carefully Never attempt to remove those spots yourself. Never scrub the coin. Never dip it into cleaner. Never polish it. The second someone tries making an old wheat penny look new, they often destroy the exact thing collectors were willing to pay for. Once the original surface disappears, the personality of the coin disappears with it. And when that happens, value can collapse instantly. This is why professional grading matters so much. Experts examine the surfaces under magnification, determine whether the aging is natural, and protect the coin inside certified holders trusted by collectors worldwide. The reverse side of the 1937 wheat penny creates another level of obsession entirely. The famous wheat stalks wrapping around 1 cent and United States of America remain one of the most iconic designs ever placed on U.S. currency. But on deeply aged survivors like this, collectors become fixated on tiny imperfections and survival traits. They study how much detail remains in the wheat lines. They inspect the darkness around the lettering. They examine whether the dirt settled naturally into the recessed areas over decades or was artificially altered later. Most people miss this. Serious collectors absolutely do not. And physically, this coin still carries the classic dimensions of the original Lincoln Wheat series. The 1937 wheat penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams and was struck from a bronze alloy made primarily of 95% copper with smaller amounts of tin and zinc. The diameter measures 19.05 millimeters, while the thickness stays around 1.55 millimeters. Its smooth edge may feel ordinary today, but when you hold a nearly century-old coin with original surfaces still intact, it creates a strange feeling that modern coins simply cannot match. It feels like holding frozen American history in your fingertips. Now here's where things become emotional for collectors. Deep pores across both sides of the coin can actually increase fascination when the surfaces remain original and stable. Why? Because every pore tells part of the coin's survival story. Maybe it spent decades hidden inside an old tobacco tin. Maybe it sat forgotten in a humid basement through multiple generations. Maybe it survived floods, dusty barns, old toolboxes, or abandoned family estates. Those scars become evidence of survival, and survival drives rarity. Auction rooms become incredibly tense when coins like this appear. Not loud tense, quiet tense. The dangerous kind. Experienced buyers lean forward and wait for the bidding to start. Some collectors stay silent for minutes before suddenly entering with massive offers. Others chase the coin emotionally because they know original Depression-era wheat pennies are disappearing fast. And once strong collectors buy them, many never return to the market again. Supply shrinks. Demand rises. Prices become harder to predict every single year. Today, examples matching this rare profile have reached astonishing market values near $300,100 under the right conditions. Think about how insane that sounds. A dirty-looking penny with green spots and rough surfaces carrying serious money, powerful enough to change someone's life forever. That's hidden wealth. That's silent fortune. And the craziest part is that people are accidentally losing these coins every day because they think old means worthless. This is why patience matters so much in coin collecting. Fast decisions destroy fortunes. Smart collectors examine everything slowly. They check dates carefully. They study mint marks or missing mint marks. They avoid cleaning. They preserve original toning and dirt because originality creates emotional demand. And emotional demand is what creates explosive auction behavior. So if you ever find a 1937 wheat penny without a mint mark, showing red-brown color, green oxidation spots, deep surface pores, and heavy old dirt, stop before you spend it. Seriously, do not spend this coin. Put it somewhere safe immediately. Handle it carefully by the edges. Avoid touching the surfaces directly. And if the coin appears authentic and untouched, professional grading could reveal you're holding far more than an ordinary penny. But stay with me, because the next coin on this list becomes even more unbelievable. What collectors discovered hiding inside that next wheat penny created absolute chaos in the market, and the value shocked even long-time experts. There's something almost dangerous about the 1944 wheat penny, not because it looks valuable, but because it doesn't. That's the trap. Millions of people have seen this coin, touched this coin, and spent this coin without giving it a second thought. Meanwhile, collectors behind the scenes have been hunting certain 1944 no-mint mark wheat pennies with a level of obsession that borders on insanity. Especially the survivors, showing original green and brown spotting across both sides in untouched, very fine condition. To ordinary people, it looks old. To serious collectors, it looks like hidden wealth sitting quietly in plain sight. And if you ignore this coin too fast, you could accidentally spend a silent fortune worth more than most people make in years. The timing of this penny is what makes the story so powerful. 1944 was one of the most intense years in American history. World War II was reshaping everything. Factories were operating non-stop. Soldiers were overseas. The economy had transformed into a wartime machine. Even coin production changed because of the war. Just 1 year earlier, in 1943, the U.S. Mint had switched Lincoln cents to steel to preserve copper for military supplies. But by 1944, the Mint returned to copper-based pennies using recycled wartime shell casings and recovered metal materials. That alone gives the 1944 wheat penny a legendary, emotional connection for collectors. This wasn't just money. It was America adapting during wartime survival. And because production exploded to meet economic demand, these coins entered circulation fast. They traveled through military towns, train stations, factories, restaurants, and busy city streets. Nobody protected them. Nobody stored them carefully. Most were spent hard until the surfaces wore down completely. That's why original survivors with natural color and strong detail are becoming harder to locate every single year. Now, this particular 1944 wheat penny without a mint mark came from Philadelphia, meaning there's no small letter beneath the date. And strangely, that missing mint mark creates huge emotional demand today. Advanced collectors know Philadelphia issues often suffered brutal circulation because of massive production numbers. Finding one today with authentic surfaces, original green and brown spotting, and strong, very fine detail feels like discovering a forgotten piece of wartime America. Look at the obverse side carefully, and you start seeing why collectors become emotionally attached to this coin. Abraham Lincoln's portrait still carries noticeable sharpness in very fine condition. Portions of the hair detail remain visible. The jawline still holds definition. The lettering around the portrait feels strong and alive. But the real fascination comes from the natural surface appearance. Those green and brown spots scattered across the coin are not always viewed as flaws. In many cases, they prove the coin was never stripped, polished, or artificially brightened. Original copper ages over decades in unpredictable ways. Moisture, air exposure, storage conditions, and time create surface personalities unique to each coin. And originality creates trust in the collector world. This is why cleaning becomes such a disaster. The second someone tries scrubbing away those natural spots, the coin can lose its authenticity instantly in the eyes of experienced buyers. Harsh cleaning leaves tiny scratches, unnatural shine, and dead surfaces that collectors hate. Some people unknowingly erase thousands of dollars in value, trying to make an old penny look better. Never clean this coin. Never dip it in chemicals. Never polish it. Original toning matters more than beginners realize. And this is exactly why professional grading is critical. Certified grading companies examine whether the surfaces remain natural, whether the color developed honestly over time, and whether the coin still retains collector-worthy originality. Once authenticated and protected inside a professional holder, the market often reacts completely differently to the same coin. Serious buyers gain confidence. Auction competition increases. Prices climb faster. Flip the coin over, and the reverse side becomes just as important. The classic wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America represent one of the most beloved coin designs in U.S. history. E pluribus unum stretches proudly across the top, and on a very fine example, enough detail remains in the wheat stalks to create strong visual appeal. Collectors become obsessed with tiny details here. They study the exact placement of color. They inspect the grain lines in the wheat ears. They examine whether the darker spots settled naturally into protected areas over decades. This detail changes everything. Physically, the 1944 wheat penny still carries the traditional specifications collectors know instantly by feel. The coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams and was struck primarily from 95% copper with smaller amounts of zinc and tin blended into the alloy. Its diameter measures 19.05 millimeters with a thickness around 1.55 millimeters. The smooth edge may seem ordinary today, but holding a wartime-era wheat penny with original surfaces feels completely different from modern pocket change. There's history in the weight, history in the smell of aged copper, history in the surface itself. What makes survival so rare is the environment these coins lived through. Wartime America was rough on currency. Coins were exchanged constantly under pressure, stress, and uncertainty. Families focused on survival, not preservation. Most 1,944 pennies became damaged, cleaned, corroded, or completely worn flat after decades of circulation. That's why untouched examples with attractive original aging are now creating aggressive demand across the collector market. An auction behavior surrounding this coin has become extremely emotional. Quiet collectors who normally avoid bidding wars suddenly become competitive when high-quality original 1944 wheat pennies appear. Some buyers aren't purchasing them for short-term profit anymore. They're holding them long-term because they believe supply will continue shrinking as more original examples disappear into private collections forever. Today, certain examples matching this rare profile have reached incredible auction values approaching $280,600 under the right market conditions. Think about how unbelievable that really is. A 1-cent coin tied to wartime America carrying life-changing money while sitting unnoticed inside old jars, dresser drawers, inherited boxes, and forgotten family collections. This is hidden treasure people are accidentally losing every single day. Most people miss this because they only search for shiny coins. But experienced collectors understand something deeper. Originality creates emotional power. Natural wear tells a story. Honest surfaces create trust. And rare survival creates demand that money alone cannot manufacture. So, if you ever come across a 1944 wheat penny without a mint mark, showing green and brown spotting across both sides with strong, very fine detail, stop immediately before spending it. Do not spend this coin. Protect the surfaces carefully. Never clean it. Study the color and lettering closely. And if the coin appears authentic and original, professional grading could reveal you're holding far more than a simple penny. But what comes next is even more shocking. The final wheat penny on this list is the kind of coin that causes collectors to lose sleep. Because when one surfaces in original condition, the entire market pays attention. Next up, the final coin on this list is the kind of penny people spend without hesitation, and later wish they could buy back for the rest of their lives. The 1945 wheat penny without a mint mark is one of the most misunderstood hidden treasures in American coin collecting, because at first glance, it almost looks ruined. Dark black layers spread across the obverse side. Strange green buildup hides inside the surface. The copper looks aged, tired, almost forgotten. But that exact appearance is what makes certain collectors stop cold the second they see one. Because underneath those haunting layers could be a silent fortune hiding in plain sight. And this is where things become dangerous for ordinary people. Most individuals assume valuable coins must look shiny and perfect. Serious collectors know the opposite is often true. Originality matters more than brightness. Natural aging matters more than artificial beauty. And when a 1945 wheat penny survives in extra fine condition with untouched black and green surface layers, the market can react aggressively. This is not fiction. These coins are quietly creating bidding wars, while countless others are accidentally dumped into circulation every day. The year 1945 carried enormous emotional weight across the United States. World War II was finally approaching its end. American factories had spent years operating under intense wartime pressure. Metal supplies were heavily managed. Production demands remained high. The entire country was emotionally exhausted from years of conflict, sacrifice, rationing, and uncertainty. During that time, coins moved constantly through the economy. Pennies passed through military bases, war factories, train depots, grocery stores, and crowded city streets. Nobody stopped to preserve them carefully. They were tools of survival during one of the most historic periods America had ever experienced. That's exactly why original survivors from 1945 have become so important today. Most examples were heavily circulated until the details disappeared completely. Others were cleaned harshly decades later by people trying to restore them. But truly untouched coins with natural surfaces, strong detail, and authentic wartime aging are becoming incredibly difficult to locate. Especially Philadelphia examples with no mint mark beneath the date. And collectors absolutely obsess over that missing mint mark. Casual observers ignore Philadelphia wheat pennies because they assume higher production means lower value. Advanced collectors understand the truth is far more complicated. Massive circulation often destroyed the majority of surviving coins. So when an extra fine 1945 survivor appears with original surfaces still intact, experienced buyers recognize immediately how unusual that really is. Look closely at the obverse side and the emotional impact becomes impossible to ignore. Abraham Lincoln's portrait still carries impressive detail in extra fine condition. Parts of the hair remain sharp. The cheek and jawline show strong definition. Portions of the coat details survive clearly. But the real fascination comes from those dark black and green layers covering the surface. To some people, they look ugly. To serious collectors, they can represent decades of untouched natural toning and environmental aging that prove the coin was never stripped or polished. And that changes everything. Because once an old copper coin gets cleaned, its personality disappears forever. The market notices immediately. Harsh cleaning leaves unnatural shine, surface scratches, and dead-looking copper that destroys collector confidence. Some people unknowingly erase life-changing money trying to make an old penny look new. Never clean this coin. Never scrape the dark layers away. Never use chemicals. Original toning is one of the most powerful forms of authenticity in the wheat penny market. This is why professional grading has become absolutely critical. Experts examine the surfaces under magnification, determine whether the black and green layers formed naturally over time, and verify whether the coin still retains original collector-worthy texture. Once certified authentic and preserved properly, these coins often become far more desirable in competitive auctions. Now flip the penny over, and the reverse design reveals another reason collectors become emotionally attached to this era of Lincoln cents. The famous wheat ears surrounding 1 cent create one of the most iconic designs in American coin history. United States of America stretches boldly across the center while E pluribus unum rests above. On extra-fine examples, much of the wheat detail remains visible, and collectors study those tiny lines obsessively. They inspect the color transitions across the reverse. They examine darker areas near the lettering. They look for signs of untouched aging hidden deep within protected spaces of the design. Most people miss this entirely. Physically, the 1945 wheat penny still carries the classic specifications that defined wartime Lincoln cents. The coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams and was struck from an alloy primarily composed of 95% copper with smaller amounts of tin and zinc. It measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter with a thickness around 1.55 millimeters. The smooth edge feels simple, but holding a nearly century-old wheat penny with authentic surfaces creates a completely different emotional experience than handling modern coins. You're touching a surviving object from one of the most intense chapters in American history. What makes this coin even more fascinating is the emotional behavior surrounding collector demand today. Buyers aren't just purchasing 1945 wheat pennies because they're old. They're buying them because original survivors are disappearing fast. Strong collectors are locking them away into long-term collections. Fewer examples reach the market every year. And whenever a naturally toned, extra-fine survivor appears, auction tension rises instantly. Some bidding wars stay quiet at first. Then suddenly, one determined collector jumps in. Another responds immediately. Prices rise in seconds because nobody wants to lose the opportunity. That fear of missing out has become incredibly powerful in the wheat penny market, especially for untouched wartime issues connected to American history. Today, examples matching this rare profile have reached astonishing auction values near $260,800 under the right market conditions. Think about that carefully. A 1 cent coin with black and green layers hiding across the surface, carrying enough value to completely change someone's financial future. That's hidden wealth. That's serious money hiding inside forgotten jars, inherited collections, dusty drawers, and old family boxes people haven't opened in years. And the craziest part? Many valuable wheat pennies are still circulating because people judge them too quickly. They see dirt. They see darkness. They see corrosion. They never stop long enough to realize they might be holding a silent fortune in the palm of their hand. So if you ever discover a 1945 wheat penny without a mint mark, showing black and green surface layers in extra fine condition, do not spend this coin. Protect it immediately. Handle it carefully by the edges. Never attempt cleaning or restoration yourself. Check every detail slowly because patience is exactly what separates ordinary people from collectors who uncover hidden treasure. And once you start checking old pennies carefully, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again.